Hello everyone, and welcome to my talk. It's a pleasure for me to be here to give this talk, and I hope you like it. Today I'm going to talk about Alzheimer's disease, and as we all know, it's a debilitating disease with no cure at the moment. It's a very complicated disease, but I'll try to keep my presentation as simple as possible today. So let's start. My talk will cover an introduction to Alzheimer's disease, then followed by symptoms, major risk factors, cause and development, diagnosis, and finally its treatment. So Alzheimer's disease is a slowly progressive disorder of the brain that is characterized by impairment of memory and eventually by disturbances in reasoning, planning, language, and perception. It's the most common cause of dementia in the elderly population. In Alzheimer's disease, brain changes include loss of neurons and synapses in the cerebral cortex and in certain subcortical regions. I'll come to that synapses in a bit. Eventually, the neuronal damage of Alzheimer's extends to the parts of the brain that enable basic bodily functions such as walking and swallowing, and some others. This loss results in gross atrophy of the affected regions. For example, as you see the illustration on the lower left panel, the left hemisphere represents a healthy brain, and the right hemisphere represents a brain with severe Alzheimer's disease. You know, you can see the shrinkage in the brain structure. It's because of the atrophy, which means the death of neuronal cells in the brain. Here on the right side, there are also two illustrations. The one on the left is a normal brain, the PET scan image of a normal brain, and PET scan image of a brain with Alzheimer's. Here you can see. The blue and dark blue regions indicate inactive regions in the brain. Generally, Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed in people over 65 years of age. Approximately twice as many women have Alzheimer's disease compared to men. So there's women domination here. An estimated 25 million people worldwide currently, at the moment, is affected by Alzheimer's disease, and this is expected to be around 100 million by 2050. Alzheimer's disease is named after Dr. Alois Alzheimer, who was a German psychiatrist. In 1906, he noticed changes in brain tissue of a woman who died of an unusual illness which was not described at that moment. Her symptoms included memory loss, language problems, and unpredictable behavior. After she died, Dr. Alzheimer examined her brain and found many abnormal clumps and tangled bundles of fibers. These abnormal clumps are now called amyloid plaques, and the tangled bundles of fibers are called neurofibrillary tangles, which are caused by tau protein. I'll come to that in a bit. So what are the symptoms? As we all know, the most important symptom is memory loss, and it's also associated with difficulty in solving problems. In addition, withdrawal from social activities, confusion with time and location, difficulty completing familiar tasks, misplacing items, unfounded emotions, poor judgment, trouble with images and spaces, difficulty with words can also be observed. But these symptoms do not occur all at once, and they occur gradually within time. Alzheimer's begins 20 years or more before memory loss and other symptoms develop. So there's a preclinical Alzheimer's disease phase. This stage does not have any symptoms. How quickly it progresses and what abilities are affected vary from person to person. So in this preclinical stage, there are no symptoms, but possible biological changes in the brain. This represents about 20 years just before the symptoms develop. In the mild cognitive impairment stage, there are very mild symptoms, that may not interfere with everyday activities. So the person still goes on working, studying, and doing the everyday activities like all of us, each one of us. In the next stage, this is the mild Alzheimer's stage, symptoms interfere with some everyday activities. And if it's moderate stage, symptoms interfere with many everyday activities. And in the final severe Alzheimer's stage, symptoms interfere with most everyday activities, which is just before the death. So what are major risk factors? There are 3 major risk factors for developing Alzheimer's disease. The most important of them is age, especially over 65 years. As you may see, by increasing age, the rate of Alzheimer's diagnosis also increases. So that means age is the most important factor in Alzheimer's disease. Another important factor is genetics, especially of ApoE gene with epsilon 4 allele. 65% of Alzheimer's patients have at least one copy of the ApoE gene with epsilon 4 allele. Also trisomy 21, Down syndrome. People with Down syndrome patients develop Alzheimer's disease in their late ages, like 30 or 40s. Most of them develop Alzheimer's disease because chromosome 21 also encodes the gene for APP protein, amyloid precursor protein. Also the mutations in amyloid precursor protein, presenilin-1 and presenilin-2 genes are important risk factors. Finally, family history is also a risk factor. Individuals who have a first-degree relative with Alzheimer's dementia are more likely to develop the disease. So, what are the potential causes and factors that cause the development of the disease? Actually, first of all, I must tell you that the exact cause of the disease is not known at the moment. These are potential causes and pathologic changes in the brain that progress with the development of the disease. Amyloid plaques, these are extracellular beta-amyloid accumulation. Beta-amyloid is a protein which is normally found in cells, but it accumulates and aggregates outside the cell, and it makes clumps, as you may see in this figure, in this illustration here. Secondly, neurofibrillary tangles. Neurofibrillary tangles are intracellular accumulation of misfolded tau protein. Tau protein is also a normal protein, but when it misfolds and forms aggregates, then in the cell, you will see such structures like these, the one in purple. Besides, synapse loss and synaptic dysfunction is also important. Cholinergic dysfunction, I'll come to that in a bit. Excitotoxicity, neuroinflammation, and oxidative stress are also among causes and developmental factors. Here you can see a little better the image of amyloid and neurofibrillary tangles. The ones in brown color represent amyloid plaques. These are outside the cells. The ones in blue color represent neurofibrillary tangles, which are caused by misfolded tau proteins and which are inside the cells. All these aggregates disrupt the function and physiology of the brain if they aggregate more. And this is a synapse. Maybe you've heard about it. A synapse is a point of contact between neurons, and it's the site of transmission between two neurons. So a synapse is a must for the information transmission between neurons. This is what we do every millisecond in our brain for hundreds and thousands of times. When you're listening to me, when I'm telling you about these, when I'm talking, walking, moving, we are doing it for hundreds or thousands of times per millisecond in the brain. If this information transmission is interrupted or disrupted, then you will not be able to learn anything, and even you will start forgetting everything that you already know. So this means memory disruption. And in this disease, in Alzheimer's disease, there is a disruption and loss of synapses, as you may see in this illustration here. This is the normal figure, and this is the abnormal figure, which shows synaptic loss. So what do we do for diagnosis? In diagnosing an Alzheimer's patient, the most important thing is initially taking a health questionnaire, of course. Afterwards, we do standard medical tests, standard blood and urine tests. And also, one of the most important tests is cognitive tests, like tests of memory, problem solving, attention, counting and language, like mini-mental state examination or some others. Brain imaging is also valuable, like CT, computer tomography, MRI or PET, positron emission tomography is also very important. And very recently, some blood tests that profile Alzheimer's disease biomarkers are very important tests for diagnosing Alzheimer's disease, especially in the early term, and some of these tests are also done in our country. And finally, the treatment. So what targets do we have currently that can be used as medication against Alzheimer's disease? One of them is FDA-approved monoclonal antibodies against amyloid beta protein. And the other is cholinergic dysfunction, FDA-approved medication, cholinesterase inhibitors. And another one is memantine, FDA-approved medication for excitotoxicity. So in this table, we can see the FDA-approved medication for Alzheimer's disease, which are currently marketed under prescription. These are chronologically ordered. In 1996, donepezil was approved by FDA, which is a cholinesterase inhibitor. Cholinesterase is an enzyme that degrades acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter which mediates learning and memory in the hippocampus and also cerebral cortex. Therefore, if the disruption and degradation of acetylcholine is prevented, then we are more able to learn and remember. Therefore, the first class of drugs that was approved by FDA was cholinesterase inhibitors. The second one, rivastigmine here, as you can see. A second class of drugs that was approved by the FDA was NMDA receptor inhibitors, which is memantine. NMDA receptor is a receptor of glutamate, which mediates the transmission of glutamate. But if it's too excited, then there is excitotoxicity for the cell, and it progresses to death. Therefore, NMDA receptor inhibitors prevent the excitotoxicity in the cell, and the memantine is used for that. And galantamine, also a cholinesterase inhibitor, in 2004 it was approved. In 2014, a combination of memantine and donepezil was approved. And finally, lecanemab here, I don't know if you can see, finally in 2023, last year in July, it received full approval from the FDA. A monoclonal antibody that targets beta amyloid protein. It prevents beta amyloid to form tangles, to form clumps, and to form aggregates. Therefore, now we have a monoclonal antibody that is very different from other classes of drugs in Alzheimer's disease treatment. But I want you to keep in mind that always, at the moment, Alzheimer's disease has no cure. Thank you very much for listening.